You know what? That's
Deadwood,
right.
and
Yes.
Sturgis, Hill City, and Custer, where we stayed, and we're 5 minutes away from Mount Rushmore, and about a few more minutes away from Crazy Horse. And then we later went over to Devil's Tower in Wyoming, and that's where you and I talked about Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Joe
Yeah.
Alves.
Joe Alves. Yeah. When you interviewed Joe Alves, and then Joe, well, you know what he did up there with the Close Encounters production designer. Yeah, that's right. Oh my God. See, half a year now, and it seems like a lot longer than that. And I've literally lost count of how many people I've seen you and how many interviews, Mike. I really have. I mean, you really plow through it, and you're a trooper, and that's why 2019 is going to be a big year for you, and hopefully, you get a lot of sponsors, and even, you've made some transitions yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and that, that's, and I don't know, it's every day we're changing for the better, or we could change for the worse, and I choose to change for the better, and I still get pissed off about things? Oh, absolutely. But does it get to me too bad like it did when before the wreck? No.
It's all part of human nature as well too, where it's like, just like myself, I used to blow up at 20, 30 years old, but then, being at other full-time jobs, blue collar, people spill, people get in accidents and all that, and every
Yep.
now and then my kids will knock over something. I just say, you know what, well, what are you going to do about it? It's like, are you gonna let it sit there? Are you gonna watch it clean up itself? Or are you gonna take care of the problem? What are you gonna do? Okay, clean it up. I said, okay, just take a paper towel, broom, whatever, and just clean it up and just go on your way. We can always replace it. That's the thing too. So, and of
Yeah,
course,
that's true.
you're talking about with sponsorships and everything else, and
Yeah.
just a question I will throw out to you is, how does one get involved in a sponsorship?
Oh, if you want to sponsor Mike's program, just they can email me directly, and I could speak with them. And you have sponsorship packets, and you really, you promote their business, or whatever venture they're doing. It could be an author, could be a musician, could be list is endless. And they just email me, and they have all the info you have out there, and we set it up, and you heard on the Mike Wagner show. Plus, Mike also interviews new sponsors, so you do an interview plus you're a sponsor, so it's kind of cool.
And of course, just like as well too. And speaking of that, before we get to some of the other parts, by the way, you're listening to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support at sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. Also on the Facebook page at facebook.com/the Mike Wagner Show. And Steve, you're one of the big fans of it. You can click, like, share, invite people to your pages. And Steve, you can also invite your friends to like my page, and they can share. They can share, of course, just like that old commercial. They can tell two friends, and so on, and so on, and so on. I'm
Yeah,
sure you remember that commercial, yes. And, of course, you can also listen to the Mike Wagner Show, download and listen now or later on SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. It's the magic of technology that makes things happen. I mean, what could I say about
it's amazing, isn't it?
it?
It's amazing how no, it's amazing how like 30 years ago this was all like, science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
How the technology we have now like was unheard of. It was infancy. It was brand new.
Mm-hmm.
And now we can do anything on phones and devices like that. So
Right, right, exactly. And of course, if we try doing this, maybe like 30 years ago, what in the 80s or something with, hair bands and, Aquanet for the women and those big earrings. And of course, heading into
yes,
the 90s with those MC Hammer, hammer pants or bloomers or whatever you call it. And, like the zoot suits and everything like that. It's like you had to do
that's yeah,
everything for a special phone line. You had these big, bulky tape machines. You had cassette decks, record players, and of course, you had
Yeah,
a
you were doing
huge
all that in
board.
those days.
And of course, the big thing was the CD player. Ooh, that was a big thing. Now it's just
Oh, that
like,
was huge. Think about it. I mean, at the time, that was pretty cool.
mm-hmm.
And they didn't tell you the damn things. They're supposed to be indestructible. But I was more of a cassette players, cassette tapes. I enjoyed more. And your age when you could talk about taking a pencil and rolling a cassette. Getting the tape and then stopping it when you're recording it, just so you hit that right mark.
Mm-hmm. Or,
So yeah,
or I think the ultimate to graduating from broadcasting school is threading a reel properly without twisting or messing up or without missing a
oh
roller
man,
or a head. Yes, it's like it took me a little bit to figure out, but I hear people, it's like, oh my gosh, they swear at it, and I had to teach them. And one of the coolest things I did, and of course, I just literally break out laughing when you hear like a boom, boom, like that, and you try to hit something. For some reason, I just bust out into laughing. It's like, if you remember the movie Good Morning Vietnam with
I
Robin
was just
Williams.
thinking about that film. I kid you not, I was just thinking about that movie. I saw it for the first time in years in last November, and I was just thinking about you look at the studio that they had, and that was pretty accurate for its time.
It does.
And
It does. Yes, of course. The monster RCA consoles, those big turntables, and one time Robin Williams, who was Adrian Cronauer at the time, he put on a
yeah,
record at the wrong speed, and he goes, "This is the
yeah,
wrong
I remember that. Yeah.
speed." Oh, that was my favorite. I busted out laughing, and
I watched that movie in November, and I watched it with a friend of mine who was actually he was in the Marine Corps for many years, and it was when I was in Kansas City in November. I was there for a month, and I was staying at this man's house, and we watched that, and I asked him. I remember I was like, I wonder if there was a real Adrian Cronauer, if that was like based on a real person, because it was amazing that whole movie. You take the comedy stick they did in it, but when they were remember how they had at the beginning before he would go on the air, how censored it was with the Armed Forces Radio,
mhm.
and he couldn't mention certain things, and then he just broke off and started mentioning about the bomb that exploded, and it was really and I wondered, was it based on a real guy? So if it was, please someone tell me, or because I hear this program, because I was curious about that.
Hmm. And actually was based on a real person. He was
It
out in New
was
York,
okay.
and ironically, my professor who taught radio, TV, voice, and broadcasting actually worked with Adrian Cronauer, and he said he was just an amazing person to work with,
Really?
and got a good
Okay.
portion of learning from him, and he was just absolutely amazing. It'd be
Oh
like
man.
how it was like Howard Stern, almost like Leave It to Beaver in a sense. I mean, that's how it was. I mean, he still kept his
Yeah.
limits, but it's like not the extreme Howard Stern, like, TNA and everything else you hear on the
Well,
radio
yeah,
these days with
and
F
and,
bombs
and
and all
Stern,
that.
yeah, Stern. Well, Howard Stern just came. He just did something different. I mean, people talk about Stern and Jerry Springer and all these people, and I go back to the days of Morton Downey Jr.
I remember
And
him,
then
yes.
for the older people, they go back to Lenny Bruce. But um, it was bound to happen. And Morton Downey Jr. He was kind of like the inventor of if you remember shows, they're wild. It was a circus. And then
Right.
Stern, he tapped into a market, and then it's a whole different discussion. But yeah, it was what it was. And now it's funny, Stern and Springer and Mort, he's dead now, but they would be considered almost like PG shows compared to the things that are out there now. That's the funny thing about the whole thing.
And of course, people demand more and more and everything else. People bleep out Howard Stern. They write letters to station manager, complain and all that. Now it's just like, Howard Stern can be heard on every, like, grade school or whatever it is, or even in the minivan. And,
Well,
and,
I don't, yeah, I don't know, but but I know that he had the ingenious way of kind of like Rush Limbaugh too.
mhm,
People who hated him would still listen to him.
right. Beca-
So I mean, he knew how to manipulate an audience, and so I mean, think about this: people who loved him were diehard fans. I remember when Stern had a TV show
I
on
remember,
MTV.
yes.
You remember the show? Yeah, it was very. it was short lived, and that was the first time I ever discovered the guy. And a friend of mine, Kevin, was telling me, but I was like, I got to see this guy way before I ever heard the show. And I remember at the same time, Rush Limbaugh has a television show, if I remember right. Yeah, he did, because he's always hawking his books.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was one of, they were the guys that if you liked them, great. They had a cult like following, and if they hated them, you'd still listen to them, like listen to what this guy said, and they would complain. So they got ratings, they got numbers. They look what they did.
And,
They're
and
genius, actually.
and of course too with Rush Limbaugh, it's like, okay, what's he going to talk about next? What's he going to talk about next? What's he going to say about Clinton, Trump, Obama, or
Yeah, who
whoever's out there?
knows?
It's like what's he going to say about this time? So it's like either it's like you agree or disagree, or say hey, I love you, or you get pissed off at him. You're right. So it's like you never know what's going to happen or what they're going to say. They could throw a curveball at you.
Yeah, and one of the quotes that I loved that I read, and sadly is from Al Capone of all people. But Al Capone was quoted as saying one time, he said, "A guy that's loved by everybody never stood up for anything." So
Mm.
you're not going to be loved by the world, and that, and you're going to have critics, and you're going to have people that lambaste you and are horrible, and that's just all there is to it. But if you stand up for your convictions, whatever they may be, and they're good and they're not causing harm, you have a live and let live policy,
Mm-hmm.
and there are people that you don't have to agree with it, but you got to look at. My mom taught me to look at things from other people's point of view for cementing my mind on something, before, and I would do that, and it's effective.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't get political and talk about all that stuff, but I mean, it's just we live at a time right now where we don't have a lot of heroes like we do. I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
In film, we grew up with the Paul Newmans and those great guys, and there's a couple of them left. But nowadays, the when the reality show stuff started to launch, it was really showing the ugliness and the ridiculous, and the people being like clowns. But it sold, and they knew people would dial into it. So I
Mm-hmm.
can't. It is what it is for me. Whenever I watch a film or TV, I go retro. I throw back, man. I watch things from years ago, and it is kind of this is the irony of one night. No, I've never told you the story. Actually, I should, but I was watching Me TV or Nick at Night, one of those deals,
Mm-hmm.
and they would have like a block of 5, 6 shows, whatever it was. And I'm watching it, Mike, and I'm not making this up, man. I'm watching it, and it's like, oh my God, I know that person. I know that person. And sure enough, like Stan Livingston. There's my three sons. It was absolutely surreal.
It,
And
it
the weird thing was seeing these people like 30, 40 years ago, and I know what they look like now. And then I don't know. It was just weird. But I enjoy things like I'm really into documentaries.
Those
I
are
love watching
very
documentaries.
knowledgeable. I love those as
Yeah,
well.
I'm into documentaries, and I'm into like I want to walk away learning something. I don't want to just be watching nonsense for a while, even though Monty Python is still quasi humorous to me, like not as much as it used to be.
still
But
a still a classic though. It's like you twit.
well, yeah, I mean they were funny, and that's one thing that I actually the guest you had on before me, he and I were talking about this a week ago, how we were both very big Mel Brooks fans, and how Brooks, I love Mel Brooks, Norman Lear changed television,
Mm-hmm.
and they would be considered ultra offensive now if Blazing Saddles was released or something like that. But they were funny.
They
And
were,
and 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 have we become very politically correct? Yes, we have. But
and that's sad.
I mean, yeah, I mean it's sad, but I don't know. It is what it is. For me though, I mean, I enjoy watching things, old classics like that. I was born maybe 40 years too late, Mike. I really think that was the case.
But it's also good to relive and show people and set an example of what's good and everything else. And there's one thing I did have to say when I first had Sandy Helberg on, and of course I haven't interviewed people in God knows how long, and I remember
Hmm.
turning people away. They say, you know what, when I was on radio, it's like, can you interview? I'm like, no, no, no. It was like, no, I got to stick to this. No, I got to stick to that because, I admit I had
Yeah.
some bad experiences. But then when